Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on the agenda. We only have one item on the agenda today. After receiving recognition from the chair, please give your name and address for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Our singular item on the agenda today is discussion and possible action regarding short and long-term goals for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. At this time, we'll open up public comments.
Hello? It's on. Hi, good afternoon. Chair Gitlin and Commissioners, I have a few comments that involve kind of the process and procedures of the board. And I feel I have to make this first paragraph comment. I feel the comments directed at Acting Director Ward by Commissioner Sullivan at the last meeting were shocking. Having served on numerous boards over the years, I've never witnessed such a personal attack at a staff member in a public meeting. The attack was wrong in many ways, but primarily showed a lack of respect. Individual concerns about staff should be handled in private, or if they rise to an important enough level, they should be handled in a closed session. The sheriff evidently made an error in the information given out to the public, and any comments that should be directed to him about that issue, not to Mr. Ward. The whole incident was very unpleasant and made you look like a bully, Mr. Sullivan, and I really am sorry about that. The public should also be treated with respect, especially since they have only 3 minutes to speak to you on a topic. I would suggest that you invest in some time of a timing system, possibly like the one the city uses, which is a computer screen visible to all people in the room at the same time, and which counts down the time. And I think they put it somewhere up there. It's very distracting to see the clerks and the chairs' arms waving to catch each other's attention while speaking. The public appreciates having the commissioners look at them while they're speaking so they feel heard. Because the time is short when speaking, it's also distressing to be interrupted and lose one's train of thought, as has happened to me. At the last meeting, I was speaking during a public hearing period when I was interrupted by the chair because he felt I was not on topic. I believe a public hearing is different than speaking to an agenda item and gives the public more leeway with their comments and assures them the full 3 minutes. Also, I should suggest that this board develop a policy like that of the Board of Supervisors, which does not allow responses from the board to comments made during the public comment period. The public wants you to just listen, not lecture them on what you think. Responses lead to discussions by the board that are not on the agenda and leave the public feeling frustrated. Thanks for listening. I think I forgot. Did I say I was Elizabeth Henry, live in the county? Thanks.
Yes, you did. Thank you. All right, are there any additional public comments regarding the singular item or any other item you wish to talk on? Discussion and action regarding short and long-term goals for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Do we have any additional comments from the public? Seeing none, then I will close the public comments and I will bring it back to our board. Now, Commissioners, I had asked all you to come prepared to our meeting today with the idea of making suggestions, recommendations, and developing your input on short-term goals and long-term goals for the Solid Waste Authority. So would any of the Commissioners care to volunteer first as to share with us your input, your suggestions, your recommendations on short-term and long-term goals for the authority?
I have a few comments.
Commissioner Ania, thank you.
I served on the solid waste board for 2 years, and I'm the alternate today. Mr. Gastineau could not make it, so these are my suggestions. I don't know what his are. Maybe he'll submit them in writing if he has different ones. One of the things at the top of my list is about the landfill. We have to find a way, and I would hope this is a short-term goal and not a long-term goal, But we are paying a fortune, the public is paying a fortune for that closed landfill, and we need to find a way to reduce that cost and get that landfill closed permanently as far as the state is concerned. We pay a lot of money for that, and I forget what number we're on. What level are we on, Ted? I forget. We're on the highest level though, right? And I know you're doing everything you can. I'm talking about in the future of how we can deal with the state, and this has nothing to do with Ted as our director. It has to do with our landfill, that I don't think we're being heard by the state, or we have to find ways to reduce that cost, because that's a yearly cost that keeps on going. And I don't know if that requires hiring a special consultant just to deal with that, but to get our costs down, but that may be well worth it in the future. But anyway, that's a goal. That's both short and long term. Wishing it's short term. The another one that comes to mind for me is to scale back on new projects. I think we have enough that we're doing already for solid waste. I mean, we have a lot of programs going, and I'm not saying don't apply for grants. I'm just talking about long-term projects that go on and on that may not benefit us all the time. That's one of the things I had. Also, in the area of finance, I know we have 2 people in finance, and I'm thinking along the lines that we need to hire a person that has a higher finance job, a higher finance, maybe a financial analyst or accountant. The city, I know, we just created a brand new position, and we started at finance analyst and decided to go to accountant, and we have a brand new accountant on board. So I'm wondering if we need to elevate one of those 2 positions, because that's very, very integral part of our solid waste, and it probably takes a person that has some type of management experience in finance to work to do that. That's all I have for now. I'm sure I'll have a few in a little later. That'll start us out.
Now, Commissioner Ania, I just want to kind of encapsulate your suggestions. So you have a short-term and a long-term goal, which is landfill closure.
Yes.
And ameliorating some of the costs there. Your scale back of new projects would be a long-term goal,
Yes.
and then hiring of a director, is that a short-term goal?
Yes, that's a short-term goal, and you know, I'm glad you said that. I missed that here. The restructure of that job and reading the assessment that we received from R3, I like the idea of combining that job into one and to making it a contract position instead of an employee
And
position.
I believe that's option 3.
Option 3. Yes, I do like that. They said in there that the job can be done that way, and I do like that option.
Commissioner Wilson.
Well, yes, hello. I was hoping today to actually hear from some of the vendors regarding work that they might be able to help out with that they are already doing. I didn't know if anyone had an opportunity to put together some ideas that might be able to help. In the R3 report, it had suggested that some, let me see here on page 18 and how they had that worded, that some of the vendors take on some of the jobs that are currently being done and to help alleviate some of the workload on the JPA. And as far as what, so I was hoping to get some input, some public input there, in that people who are doing the work would know the best where efforts can be saved and where work can be saved. So I was hoping that that would happen today. In relation to long-term goals, again, I did have a meeting with the auditor, and in our meeting we had several different points that we came up with, that we of course talked about the finances, and basically, the auditors, they felt that a review should be done, comparing actual revenues and expenses against the budget on a monthly basis, so that we had more current numbers It's been very difficult in this position in that we have budgeted numbers and we're not able to compare those against the auditor's numbers until a couple of months down the road. And again, we also felt that, to plan out the next 10 years worth of budget, I know I've been asking about multiple times about a trend analysis to see what's happening with the costs, the expenses, payroll, and that I feel that we need to, again, not be in a reactive position, but to take a proactive position. And one of my goals would definitely be to, plan for the next 10 years budget. Hopefully be able to build up some funds to cover landfill liability. And and then again, in relation to the financial accounting, where I feel we're at right now is that both the auditors and myself felt that Mr. Taylor does a very good job with the financial accounting, but the current staff don't have the necessary bookkeeping and accounting expertise to create their own financial information, because we do not really have anything that we can use again on and you see what we got, a real time applicable, able to compare revenues and expenses. And I agree with Mr. Ania that to maybe create a position that would be some type of a financial analyst that could put together figures for us and that would report directly to this board. And in thinking about the position, what I personally feel is that there are a couple different ways to do it. We need to have someone that would collect the cash and balance it, and as well as do some record keeping. I know we've been discussing whether we should go with QuickBooks or not. And in the R3 report, they stated that they didn't feel that that was appropriate. Mr. Taylor, I don't know where he's at. He feels that that would be appropriate, but I don't know how much work is going to be involved in getting that all up to speed. And I don't want to create a third set of books that's going to have another person, it's supposed to be helping us to be more efficient, not create more work. And so that's what I don't want, is I don't want to have an additional system. I'd like to have it streamlined so that it's easy to handle. I do feel, though, that a person that had some training and a financial analyst would be able to, use simple spreadsheets and double entry bookkeeping that would be easy for us to track. So all in all, again, there are multiple reasons why I definitely feel that we need to have someone in place that has skills to handle the finances in a manner that would give this board some better information. How that's done, there are many different types of options on how to do that, but I definitely feel that it is a goal that we need to create a position that will handle and have the responsibility. If something isn't correct, we go to that person, and that they will be able to explain, where we are off, because we definitely have had issues with our finances in the past. So to me, that is a very high priority and a very high goal. And I also agree with Commissioner Ania, scaling back on new projects. And as far as the options that are on the table, again, I definitely also feel that administratively the top two positions can be combined, and particularly if there's a person that has some financial expertise. That will alleviate a lot of the work and time. So those would be my goals. In addition, I'd like to see something that we could budget into the future so we would know what's going to happen with rates and expenses, and someone needs to look down the road to see where we're going to be, and it might look good now, but like I said, I know the workers' comp, all the different things that have gone up for me personally, healthcare, paying for retirement, all those things are going up. We definitely we have a lot of unfunded liabilities. We only put in, was it $7,000 or $11,000 out of $55,000 this year. So we don't have all of we have liabilities that are unfunded for the future. For if someone's going to retire, money won't be there for them. So those are things that we need to work towards. Okay. I think
Commissioner Wilson, I just want to make a comment regarding hearing from the vendors. The vendors did contact me with regard to your statement. I felt it was a function of the board to decide, and actually the board should direct the vendors to come in with feedback rather than an individual member. So if we wish to take that up here at this meeting to entertain a motion to direct our vendors, I would be open to that, but I think all members of the authority should have input on hearing from the vendors. So that would be my reason. That's why we're not hearing from the vendors today. I think one of our vendors is out ill with the doctor today, and the other one is here. And I didn't want to put anyone on the spot until they actually have board direction. So we can entertain that during this meeting about so directing, and if you'd like to make that motion, and I'll entertain that motion with the idea of directing vendors for input, recommendations, and suggestions with regard to the direction of the authority. I'd accept that now as a motion.
I would like to. Oh.
We did at one point form an ad hoc to look at, sorry to interrupt, to look at with somebody from Hambros, somebody from Recology, 2 members of the board, to come back with some working suggestions on how to improve and create savings in the process, or that might be.
It didn't work.
Well, we never got back. We had.
Well, let's do it
people
now.
going sideways. Basically.
I'll entertain. Are you making a motion on that, Commissioner Wilson?
Well, I'll make a motion, then we can discuss it. Yes, I would like to make a motion that the board would ask the vendors, particularly Recology and WSG, to present some options to this board for ways that they might be able to help with some of the recommendations that were made in the R3 report, that they might take on some, this motion's getting too long, that they would bring back recommendations on ways that we might be able to save money and provide a good product, and have a set aside for our.
And then are you making this motion
I know
with
it's
July
terrible.
9th as our next meeting, that they would have some input at that time?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second for that motion? I'll clean it up so everybody understands it. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have okay, at this point, then we have a motion, and we have a second to the motion. I'll bring it back to board discussion on that.
Yeah, I too want to hear as much information as we can possibly hear, but I don't know if the vendors really know what the expectation is as far as honing in on a particular area. I mean, we have a wide range of responsibilities, and it's to answer what kind of question, I guess. Do we want them to hone in on educational programs, as it said in the R3 report, or what is it we would like the vendors to take off our plate so that they know how to concentrate their effort? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, very, very good. I would assume that it would be things that they would be. I know that our Recology already does some educational programs, and they put forward some, so they would concentrate on educational. I cannot say exactly what reports are done by the different vendors. I don't know their job well enough to know what reports that they might do that would tie in with the authority. That if a lot of information already comes from the vendors, then it goes to the authority. I'm just wondering if the vendors can then just finish any reports, if there are any. I don't even really know exactly. I know you do give information, but there are reports that might be able to be done by the vendors.
Commissioner
know.
Wilson,
I'd have to ask.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought on this, but you had given direction to our vendors to bring in information today, and the phone call came back to me, what is it you want? And then I said, it's a board action. And I think once we have determined that we wish their recommendations, their feedback, and their suggestions on how this board looks into the future, both on a short-term and a long-term basis, I think that's what you were intending to determine when you made the suggestion as an individual. I'm just asking to make this as a board decision rather than an individual commissioner decision. So your intent and what you said at the last meeting is very much real. We'd like to make it as part of our board rather than just one individual commissioner. So when you asked the vendors for feedback, what were you specifically referring to?
Well, again, my understanding is that this is we are open to input to determine our long-term goals and short-term goals, and that if there is something that they can work that they can do that would help us. I see where the confusion is, and I understand what you just said. So I would correct myself in that we should stick only to this long and short-term goals at this point in time. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, I am, and it's not to say that the vendors can't be offered some degree of latitude in what they wish to share with us about their opinion of the organization of which they work under. And I say this because we are in need of their assistance and they're in need of their help. So the motion, as I'm hearing you say it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Wilson, is you would like input, suggestions, and recommendations from our vendors as to short and long-term goals for the authority. And you would like those recommendations, input, and suggestions at the July 9th meeting of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, and then we can agendize it at that time. Is that okay?
Yes, I like the way that you
Commissioner Ania, you had seconded that?
Yes, I agree with that, and like Commissioner Wilson said, and also Commissioner Hawley, one of them is education. I mean, when we go to fairs and booths, and we have Recology, and we have, for example, and we have solid waste, some of those things are very closely related. So Recology may be able to do that booth as one, with the Solid Waste Authority signed there too, and answer those questions for people as far as educational programs. And that's what I think we're alluding to. And there may be others that both groups can do, because they've read this report, so they know what they may be able to help out with. I don't think it's a question of not knowing what to say, because they've read this. And they may say, you know, we can't help you with anything.
Well, there's also a political reality.
Yes.
Is I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Right.
If the vendors so choose to make comments, which could very well be very helpful to
Right.
all the commissioners on here, I personally would welcome them.
Right.
If there is a situation where this exists, where those comments may be misconstrued, misunderstood, and have negative after effects, then I could certainly understand the reticence of a vendor to say, I really don't wish to
Yeah,
opine.
and I understand
in
that they're
area.
under contract and they have their contract, but there may be something that we miss that they may be able to do to
Well,
help
then,
us.
the motion is in the form of a request.
Yes.
And the vendors may choose not to opt out
Yes.
and not make those comments. Okay, so,
Mr. Galvin?
go ahead, Commissioner Hawley.
If I could, page 3 of 26, this is part of the difficulty we have in reacting to the R3 report, is there some generalizations that make it difficult for us, for the vendors especially, to respond. It says that the executive director and program manager positions be combined into a single full-time solid waste manager position, but then it goes on to say that we need to eliminate or defer non-essential tasks and delegate certain other required tasks to administrative staff, the county and/or Recology and Hambro WSG, where that can be done effectively to the benefit of the authority. So, I mean, even R3's request is very, very broad, and I don't know how any of us really react to that. So that's the difficulty that I'm having. I think maybe that's the difficulty that Mary's having as well.
Well, again, my response to you, Commissioner Holly, is that there's a certain degree of flexibility and latitude in the report, and it is open to interpretation. That's how you see it, and I understand that. Commissioner Sullivan, did you have some input?
I think the request to both Ambrose and Recology would be, are there some responsibilities that can be shared? Is there something that the organization Solid Waste does right now? Is it something you guys can take on? Is it something above and beyond that you charge a fee for it? Educational outreach, to me, it seems like a natural for both organizations. They may already do it. That really is what I would reach out to vendors, just recommendations, and then at a later time, potential cost savings going forward. I know Recology offered, when the school district came back at 80 grand over per month on their fees, they offered to go in and work with them, and I think that's the type of thing, because I'd like to see some cost savings going forward on
Of
this
course.
thing. So I'm not opposed to asking the vendors. You guys have a better idea than the rest of us. You deal with it every day. I'd like to know, one, is there parts of what the authority currently does that you guys could take over? And if there's a cost with that. Additionally, I mean, my overall thing, not to speak to this motion more or less, is I would like to see this become more of a utility than a social change agent. I don't.
Commissioner Sullivan, I'm going to ask you to hold your comments on your suggestions other than the motion right now, because I would like to hear that in a standalone statement. So if you wouldn't mind holding
So
your
why don't we
comments.
wait till we do the motion till everybody gets done?
Okay, what we'll do is what we're doing is we're going around here for board comments on the motion only. Now, has everybody had an opportunity to do that? Because then I'll invite the public to speak up. And we have two additional commissioners and myself who will also address your short and long-term goals. Any member of the public wish to address on the motion on the table right now? Okay, come up, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Henry from the county. I'm not sure I have all my thoughts in order, but it seems to me they're your franchisees. You're the boss with a franchise contract. It seems more appropriate for you to figure out what you want to do specifically and then ask them, can they play a role, to throw a ball in their court and say, well, what do you think? You know, what could, to me, it's just too vague, and you're not going to get anywhere. The other thing is, and I think it's been stated over and over, Recology does education, but they educate on what they do. And that's their role, and that's what they spend their money on. They're not going to add these things to your, and do them for you because they're nice guys. They're going to send you a bill, and that will probably become part of the franchise. It should all be done through the franchise. So I don't know where you're going with this, and I'm not sure what role you have for Hambro. But again, authority does oil recycling, carpet recycling, hazardous waste. Recology doesn't do those things, and they don't have a hands-on, so why would they do education on it? The authority does a really good job. They also can get grants to do that. Recology is not going to be able to get state grants to do education the same way that the authority can. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Mr. White?
Wes White with Hambro WSG. I think the reason that, at least last time, we didn't have a lot of input, but was because of the politically sensitive nature of the situation. If, for instance, we took one side of a situation versus another, and that side happened to lose, there could be negative ramifications to us. That stays the same in my sense, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Sparrow, but my sense is he would feel the same. However, with respect to potential things that we could do to help the authority, such as reporting, if we could, my suggestion would be to have I think Ms. Wilson, you had a report that showed all the different reports and the timelines. If we could have that, we could speak to whether or not we could generate a report such as that and help out in manners like that, that would be appropriate, I think, to do if we're directed to do so by the board. But as far as the organizational structure itself, I think that's inappropriate for a vendor to say, well, you know, we should do this or we should do that. You know, we have our own beliefs, but that needs to be kept private, and because we're a vendor to, you know, the authority. So it's a little confusing because, you know, we have to work with the director, and yet we kind of report to the board too, so it's a little bit sensitive, so. I don't know if that helps at all.
Point taken, Mr. White, and again, this is a request.
Understood.
It comes without charge to anybody. It's a volunteer. If you choose not to make those comments, you can certainly opt out with no repercussions whatsoever. And I would say the same thing to Mr. Sparrow, if he were here today. I think what this board is doing holistically is reaching out and trying to find out as much information as possible, so it makes clear, cogent suggestions, decisions, which will be to the benefit of the community. And that was the whole purpose of it. I still think there is some validity, and there's information that you might be able to share with us in your day-to-day operations.
Agreed.
That might be helpful to us.
Agreed.
And I would hope that if the board passes this motion, that you would share that with us. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, any other public comments, please?
Catherine Murray, I'm a resident of the city and the county. The last two public comments, I'd like to take another step further. The issues that you're discussing are not specifically agendized, and so I would like to ask that this commission have specific items that you would like to have addressed and have action items on your next agenda. You don't just set up ideas and say, we'd like to have short and long-term goals, and then you toss them out and then you make up stuff as you go along, because you don't know what you're going to get. So as the chair, it is your obligation to set up exactly what you want to do before the meeting, so that you have a specific action item that you want to take, and then you take the action at the meeting. Because what we're hearing right now is things that are just coming up, and then we don't know what the roadmap is going to be. So the idea of having vendors being thrown out and asking them what to do it's not really very appropriate, number one, and they're telling you right now that they don't think it's appropriate either. So I would like to say that I think that you should have the items that you want actions taken on at the next meeting. That's my suggestion. I am not in favor of combining positions that clearly have been quite a burden on your staff. So I think that we need to not contract out, and we should keep our executive director and our program manager separate, so that we have sufficient staffing to do the jobs that we need to do here, and keep our recycling, that is such an extremely important program here in Del Norte County. It is not just a utility, Mr. Sullivan, as I see you rolling your eyes. You may notice on certain garbage days and recycling days in the community that there are more and more people who are reducing the size of their garbage and keeping their recycling cans larger as the years are passing by. So people are taking advantage of recycling, and they're using less and less garbage, which is good for our landfills and our planet. So I'd like for you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Mr. Lonsdale, you were standing up. Okay, I'm going to defer to Council Rice. I felt that this issue, since Commissioner Wilson brought it up about feedback on short and long-term goals, was tangential to the issue of what we're dealing with today. Is it appropriate to have a motion on the floor with a second, or should we re-agendize this for the July 9th meeting?
I think it's related enough that your request today is that they bring back information for your consideration at a future time. It's not really a significant action, but I do think that maybe we need to refocus our comments and exactly what we're trying to accomplish today. I think Commissioner Anea was off to a good start, stating what he thought were maybe some long-term and short-term goals. And then I think once this board decides, through probably a series of workshops, what long-term and short-term goals were, then you need to go through the specifics of how you're going to accomplish those goals. And I think right now we're starting to jump into how we're going to accomplish goals before we're actually set what those goals are.
Understood. Thank you, Council Rice. All right, so let's take action on the motion on the floor from Commissioner Wilson and seconded by Commissioner Anea to request. It's a volunteer effort and one which is under no obligation to respond for the July 9th meeting, a motion to invite input, suggestions, and recommendations on goals as set forth by the short-term and long-term goals of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. So let's poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson? Yes. Commissioner Anea?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, now, and we will now return to the input, suggestions, and recommendations of the two other commissioners who have yet to speak on this. Let me go to you, Commissioner Hawley, with regard to your mindset on short and long-term goals for the authority at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gitlin. You know, I haven't really done this kind of a process without a professional strategic planner. And I have to say that this is it's a different kind of an activity without someone kind of leading. I mean, you're doing what you can, Mr. Gitlin, but there are professionals that do this for a living, and it does make the process easier. At the same time, I understand there's really not an appetite for spending any more money on consultants. So I'll come back to that in just a second. In the interim, though, I was trying to think of a process that we can use moving forward. And I don't know how many people in the room are familiar with interest-based negotiations. I know there's a couple of people out there that know interest-based negotiations. And basically what you do, it's usually in negotiating with employee groups, but you identify the interests, which is effectively what we're doing right now. There's actually several stages. You define what the problem is. And the definition of the problem has been part of the issue as we've gone forward here over the last year or so. We're trying to define the problems, and I think R3 has helped somewhat in that area. And then during the process, you set up guidelines for all of our behaviors. You know, you're hard on issues and not people. You take care of the issues in the room before you really get down to business. And the ultimate goal is to find solutions that everybody can live with. Not that everybody likes necessarily, but what you can live with. So in the end, though, the important part of this is something maybe we can do eventually, and that is doing proposals for options. And I've seen this work, and I really have seen it work effectively, where you put options on the board. If the interest is in, which mine is, and I'll say this in a minute, is that we hire an executive director. You know, what are the options for the executive director? Do we want a half-time person? Do we want a full-time person? Do we want a contract person? And then you get all the ideas up on a board. And I know this is kind of hands-on, but it may be what we need to do. You get all these options up there, and then you can start evaluating each option. And really, more often than not, you're able to cross them out right away. And eventually you get to something everyone can live with. So maybe down the road, we can look at that kind of a process. Just a thought. It seemed to fit with what we're trying to accomplish today. Now, as far as short and long-term goals, I have, you know, going back to interest-based negotiations, they have a thing called an elephant in the room. And my elephant in the room is that I really think we need a stable executive director of some kind. So for me, that is the primary short-term goal. And a lot of this turns on the timing of getting this executive director, because if we get the right person, he or she should be able to shepherd the rest of the strategic planning process. My thought is we're not going to afford a consultant, but maybe we can hire staff that have some of that skill set to carry us through long term. So I am interested in concentrating as much effort as we can in the short-term goal of getting stability in that director's position. So the only other thing I would say is, I don't know if we've all gone back and actually reviewed the current annual work plan and the current JPA responsibilities. I mean, eventually, you'd think that that would be a place where we'd start in this process, is going back and looking at history, maybe looking at the history of the cuts that have already happened in the JPA. And so put things into kind of a historical perspective. And that takes time, but it may be time savings in the long run. So I think this is a good process, and we'll do the best we can. But again, my main short-term goal is an executive director position. I know there's some philosophical differences on this board as to whether or not we should be utility, or I don't know about social change agency, but we could identify social responsibilities that are not necessarily negative responsibilities, but which may come along with grant funds, and I see no reason why we wouldn't consider those in the future. So anyway, we can have those. We don't want to get caught up in those, I don't think, but we can have those discussions as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Hawley. Commissioner Sullivan.
I would agree. Well, first of all, I will apologize. I caught myself with the eyes rolling, and I have no business doing that. So I disagree with you on some of the comments, but I shouldn't be doing that. So I apologize on that. Back on this, I agree with Commissioner Hawley. I think our primary responsibility should be to get an executive director. I agree with Commissioner Ania, I think, and Commissioner Brown that it should be, Commissioner Wilson. It should be a contracted position. I think the program manager and executive director position should be combined into one position. That would be my short-term goal. That person should have a strong financial background. They're managing a business, and I do not want to get back in a situation where we were before with money coming missing. I agree we reach out to the vendors, but I agree our highest priority right now would be someone to get in that role, and I would prefer to contract it. I think that gives the board more flexibility going forward. It also means we're not absorbing all the, they can take care of their benefits on it through the contract, which doesn't change any of the gate staff. It just changes, from my end, those two positions. And my position is, I think it is a utility, and I would treat it that way. I think the more extravagant we get, the more costs that come up with it, and then we really need to find out where the money's come from. I think people are willing to I had a conversation with a constituent yesterday about the green recycling thing, and their view is that it is really expensive on the green recycling side. Also, the flip side, I've talked to some business owners, and the commercial recycling cost is astronomical because we all get free recycling as part of our contract. And I think if it's that important of a deal, and I agree with recycling, I do it myself, but I think if it's that important to the community, if that's big of a priority, then we should all pay. We should share the costs on it. And unfortunately, I think past boards went with basically putting the burden on the business community, and in LA or a bigger community where you have a bigger private sector, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But here, the private sector is pretty small compared to the public sector on that. So that's why I think my focus long-term would be to get back to focusing on a utility until we can get our house in order. But that would be top priority as executive director. So I agree with Commissioner Hawley, that should be our top person. If we get a person with that expertise in there, then they can lead the strategic planning session going forward, because I do agree you need typically a facilitator to run one of these sessions.
So Commissioner Wilson, your suggestion is option 3, which is the contracted position. Is that my understanding? I'm sorry, Commissioner Sullivan. Option 3.
I would go with the contract position.
All right. Commissioner Wilson, what you had indicated also, I don't think you indicated which option. You were talking about merging the director and the manager, the program manager's position into one. Did you have a particular model in mind as to which option you preferred at this time?
You know, honestly, at this time, I did not have a preference between the contracting and the hire. I would need to look at it a little bit more closely and look at the numbers to make a determination.
Okay. Well, I guess it's my turn. So I'll have to share with you my goals. Short-term goal also is to select a permanent director. I actually felt we should seriously look at the private model, option 4, though I would be satisfied to work with the consensus on option 3, which is a contracted position. Long-term goals, I think we need to ameliorate the burden on the business community, which is seemed to have been greatly enhanced over the last several years. And we need to scale our operations of the authority to what I'll call, and agreeing with Commissioner Sullivan, utilitarian, utility status. And so we are essentially, as an authority, acting as not as a large market recycler. We seem to have this status we have right now, where we have all the bells and whistles if we were a larger community like Sonoma County, which we're not, and it can be costly. So those would be my suggestions. So I kind of want to go over what you've all said, and pleased to affirm that, Commissioner Ania, you have some issues, short and long term, with the stabilization of the landfill. You want to scale back the costs as best you can, and you are looking at a contract option 3. Were there any other comments that you had?
The other one was the finance, and in the R3 report, they suggest that they combine the administrative assistant and account clerk into a single management analyst. That's their term.
So the new director would have a strong emphasis in financial management.
Right.
Okay.
No, that's different.
No, that's different. This is for the finance.
Okay, finance.
Positions.
Okay.
They recommend a management analyst position instead of a account clerk. They recommend a stronger person in finance, with stronger, not a stronger person, but that has a stronger administrative or finance experience. And that's part of what I have for the short-term goal.
Commissioner Wilson, you wish to hear from the vendors, and again, this would be on a voluntary basis. You've interfaced with the auditor's office, and you want to create a position where the new director will have strong financial background, scale back on new functions, and your option is to merge the existing director's position, program director's position. Is that essentially a capsule on which you began? Commissioner Holly, yours comments were you're open to, and I'm going to see if I can say this right, a proposal of different options. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but something that's not currently on the table right here.
Yeah, I don't think we're bound by R3's options. I think they gave us options, and there may be other options out there, especially in regards to the executive director, program manager positions.
And your position is to hire on a full-time basis an executive director, short-term goal, and that would be option 3, is what I think I heard you say. Is that correct?
I'd have to review the numbers. Let me just speak to that just for a second, if I could, just for clarity. You know, the difficulty that we're having is R3 hedged its bets a little bit and said basically that in order to combine those two positions, we needed to deal with the landfill differently. And basically, it sounded like hand off the landfill to the county and hand off some of the educational programs to the vendors, for example. And that's kind of an uphill battle. Not an uphill battle, but there's a lot of work that has to be done in order to accomplish that, I have a feeling. And it's going to come with some kind of cost. So that needs to be evaluated probably before we move forward with a combined position. And also, as I understand it, some negotiations may have to occur because that would impact Ted's current permanent position as a program manager. Okay. So that, you know, there's stuff that has to happen before we get to the executive director, unless we hire a regular executive director, at least for now, and then we go ahead and make the bifurcation at a later date.
I understand.
And we could do that. Is that kind of what you're talking about? That's another option. I'm not sure how to get there. That's why I wanted to talk with you guys. We'd have to see. I think they need, at the landfill, I think they need more hands there. I'd hate to have someone come in once a month. I think we need something more than that.
You didn't mean from the landfill, you mean transfer site.
Transfer site,
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan, you indicated your priority for short-term goal was to hire a new executive director with a strong financial background, and I heard you also indicate option 3, contract employee, and return the function of the authority to what we'll call utility status. Is there anything else you want to add on that?
No, I think Commissioner Nia's point about scaling back a little bit in terms of the extracurricular stuff, I think I would agree with that.
Okay,
But maybe, you know, Commissioner Hall, you may have that, we looked at it at the very beginning of this process, is bringing in, we looked at it a couple people, in fact, we interviewed a couple people to step in as an interim director, just on a contract basis for the time being, until we figured out things, and maybe that's the option right now. I'm not sure, I don't, that we may be going backwards on that.
well, the purpose of this workshop, and it's gone a lot more smoothly than I thought it would be, is to discuss and possible action regarding short and long-term goals for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. We certainly have the discussion in line, and we certainly heard from the public and all members of the board as to their vision. Is there any action this board wishes to take at this time on any of these short or long-term goals, suggestions, recommendations, or input from the commissioners?
I don't have any action other than to say that we need another meeting of this, and I don't know if we can accomplish that in a regular meeting or you have to call another special meeting. Just depends how, usually the agenda is pretty long for regular meetings. I would think Mr. Ward is pretty full for the next meeting, the next regular meeting. So it would be best to have another special meeting. I'm taking it.
Okay, I you know, gathering 5 people
It's difficult, I understand.
is a whole challenge to meet at a specific time. I kind of hoped we would be able to do this during the next meeting of our regularly scheduled July 9th meeting, that we could have this agendized and a continuation of discussion on these with encapsulized synopses, I guess you might say, of the commissioner's input on this at the July 9th meeting. Do we have a consensus on that, or is this group up for me scheduling a standalone meeting at some point in the immediate future?
I'd like to try and accomplish this during our regular meetings. I don't think we're in an emergency situation because staff has done such a good job keeping it together to this point. But there are some questions. I think I would like to, as part of a future meeting, go back over the goals and objectives of you know, to do some of the history stuff and go back over those. I hate to rehash a lot of things. Go back over the work plan, because my problem is, as I look at the work plan myself, the annual goals that we already have established, most of those are utility. I don't see that there's a lot of social kinds of activities on that work plan. They're real tangible kinds of activities, and I just think it would be good for our own background to review that a little bit so we have an idea where we're going, but not spend a lot of time with it. I think we probably do need to agendize what to do now that we have the R3 report, you know, how to approach the executive director position.
Okay, do we have a consensus regarding Commissioner Holly's request to reacquaint ourselves with the goals and what other work plan? Goals and the work plan for the authority? Then do we have a consensus on that? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ted, if you'd please put that on the July 9th agenda to place the goals down there, and then we can discuss that. And then also place on round 2 under General Solid Waste Authority matters, discussion and possible action regarding short and long-term goals for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, also as an agenda item for the July 9th meeting. Okay, now having seen that,
Chair,
yes, sorry.
over here, I make a request. If you do want to discuss filling the executive director position or how you want to fill the executive director's position at the next meeting, I'd ask that that also be separately agendized.
Okay, do I get consensus from the board on that? All right, that's a separate agenda item for the hiring of the, and I'm going to presume it's a full-time position. I heard some discussion about part-time position, a full-time executive director, and have that on the agenda for possible flying of that position.
Yeah, well, it could include, one of the possibilities would be direction to fill the executive director position as it exists now, or whatever other ideas, you may come up with, but it would be an opportunity for the board to discuss how they want to see that position and then make a decision.
Okay, thank you, Council Rice. All right, Commissioners, any additional comments?
Just that item would be discussion possible action? Is that how we agendize that? Is that,
Yes.
seems appropriate to me.
Yes, regarding the filling of the executive director position.
Thank you.
Can we make a recommendation, maybe the chair, the vice chair, and council get together so that this is done properly in terms of how we're going to deal with this, and probably a little more concise too.
All right, so we'll have 3 items on the agenda for the July 9th meeting. Item number 1 is the continuation of the discussion and possible action regarding short and long-term goals, which will include an invitation from our vendors to opine and offer their suggestions on a voluntary basis, of course. We'll also discuss the executive director's position and the Ted, what was the third one now you have there? They're kind of getting mixed up here. And the goals.
The review, the goal, the purpose and the work plan.
And the purpose of the work plan. So those 3 items will be on the agenda for July 9th. Okay. If having no more additional comments from our commissioners, we'll adjourn this meeting at this time.